What up? What up? It's the man Sean P coming in live. This is the Sean P Experience on YouTube. How y'all doing out there, man? Another great show lined up for y'all. I got something very special and unique for this show. I mean, I sometimes say that this is a very unique experience, right? We are here talking about the Davenports. Look at that nice, beautiful gold cover, man. You gotta be able to see the person get the real effect of the gold. Look at the light just reflecting off of it, this gold fall like covering. Love it. Very unique touch to the book. You see my pen is showing P, what I do to it, my annotations and whatnot, and my tabs and my notes, right? But this is a very unique show because I wasn't able to get the actual author on the air, but we did a email interview, if you will. I sent in my questions and she replied back to me via email. So for the first time ever, I'll be reading off the responses. Right? You see it. Got about 3 pages Q&A, right? So the entire interview is going to be here in paper. And so I'm gonna read my questions off, and I'll tell you guys what she said in response, and then we'll go from there, right? So before I go into the actual Q&A part, I'm gonna do a small little my personal take on the Davenport. I totally, absolutely enjoyed this book. As y'all know, I'm big on nonfiction, right? I do my share of fiction work too, but I'm bigger on nonfiction. I probably did 15 plus years of reading history, African studies, Black studies, African history, uh, social justice topics, Black Power movement, Civil Rights movement, Reconstruction. I can go to certain pockets that I spend a lot of time reading those books. But the past couple of years reading fictional books, I definitely love the genre of historical fiction because I can get my fictional taste buds going, but still get that historical flavor that I need, right? So I'm still getting something out of it, even in the fictional tale. So in the Davenport, this book takes place in Chicago. Of course, I personally love Chicago, besides being cold. I can't stand being cold from Louisiana. I'm in Louisiana right now, but I love the city of Chicago. Very, very rich black history in Chicago. Black man discovered Chicago. How about that bit of history, right? Davenports take place in Chicago. You have this thriving black family, the Davenports, right? And you have the young ladies you had to come, but you have four main young ladies that the book is really following within this story of the Davenports. And these four young ladies have four different, I want to say, trajectories of their life and where they want to take it, what they want to do. But this is at a time, of course, where yeah, the old school way of doing things, right? Your parents want to try to give you a better life than what they had. These people, the parents, they came from that slavery time. They came from that time right after slavery, all the Jim Crow stuff going on, convict leasing, all the things that we know about what's happening, right? So they want their children to have a way better life than what they had. And sometimes as a child, you want something different than what your parents want. Now, if you watch a TV series like the Game of Thrones or some of these other shows like that, where you have the House of Targaryen and the House of Stark, right? They want to do anything by any means to keep the family lineage going, keep the family name going. The parents sacrifice a lot to get the family in a certain position, and we want to have that to continue for the great grandchildren and after that. So we need our child to do this certain thing to keep it going. This is some of the dichotomy happening within the Davenport story, right? Some little small taster. Totally love the book. I advise it to anybody, but especially that young adult genre, those high school, college age, young adult kind of people. Let them get this for sure. Your nieces, nephews, your kids, cousins. I highly advise the Davenports. And yes, there will be another one. Telling you right now, there will be a part two. So get ahead of the curve. Don't wait until they announce the book reveal and the cover reveal. You all scrambling. Oh my God, I gotta go find the first one. I'm telling you right now, read this one, because there will be a second one. As a matter of fact, at the back of the book, I think the very, very last part of the book, it goes into kind of a sneak peek of the next one. I don't want to quote incorrectly. You see, in church, bear with me. No, I'm not tripping. Yeah, here you go. No one tripping. Chicago 1910, summer, right? And then it goes into chapter one of the next story. This is the very back of the book. So those that read the book, you got to the last page and just put the book down. There is a bonus section in there to go a little deeper to the story, right? So Davenports, A1, Miss Krystal, the author, well done. I enjoyed it. I loved it. I'm glad I read it. And I had this thing I do lately, right? The past couple of years, my guest. I read the physical book, but I'm also playing the audio version. I listen to it via Spotify. I'm not getting paid to say that. I'm just giving specifics. I listen via Spotify. I totally enjoyed the audio version of the book as well. So whenever I wasn't sitting down, taking hands-on notes, I'm driving around back and forth to work, playing the audio version of the book, and going back and annotating it. I enjoy both experiences, man. So audio or physical, can't go wrong with that. The Davenport. Now we're going to our actual interview. Segue. So here we go. Here goes nothing. I start by asking the question I always ask my guests. This show, for those that don't know, this show is called Sitting with the Griots. The Griots are your ancient African storytellers. Shameless plug, Kofi and myself wrote a book called The Modern Day Griot last year. Go to the website, you can check that out. We give you a full breakdown on the history of the Griot, precisely where they're from, certain regions in Africa, their roles, their duties, etc., etc., etc. Right? So this show being the modern day Griot, we're talking about the current storytellers. And I asked her, what do you think about being called a modern day Griot? Do you feel any pressure or weight holding that moniker? She said, wow, I hadn't heard anybody call me a modern day Griot. It is definitely a title that carries a lot of weight and responsibility. It's such an honor to be thought of in that way. There are so many artists I admire for their storytelling. While writing Davenports, I wanted to share a part of American history that excited me, and I wish I had learned sooner. I totally agree with that. I think all of us need this history in our life early because a lot of our generations currently, we only think about Tyler Perry, Oprah Winfrey, LeBron James, Barack Obama, like as if we just started to get old. We got to realize in real life, right after slavery, you had a lot of thriving black communities around the whole country, not just Black Wall Street, not just Chicago. You had Rosewood, you had in Atlanta where MLK is from is a good example. The street MLK grew up on was like a little Black Wall Street. There are other places around the country where it was thriving. Memphis, Tennessee, with Robert Church and what they was doing down there, Bell Street, you know about Bell Street, right? James Baldwin. Like a lot of these places were thriving communities of black people. They had money, thriving businesses of different sorts. Go and find the book called Black Fortunes. I did a whole live on that a couple years ago, right? Whole live on Black Fortunes. Go and find the book called The History of the Black Dollar. I've covered that before too. Like we've had people. One second. Oh, sorry, there's some had a pop-up came on screen. We had pockets of people that were thriving black communities with business owners of various sorts. Don't think we didn't have thriving business as if we can't do business. Don't think we didn't have property and land. We did. So like she said earlier, I wish we learned sooner because when you're a child getting that pride, that racial pride, you thrive more in academics. You take school more seriously. You expect more out of yourself, right? So that's my rebuttal to her answer to that question. We go on to question number two. All right, here we go. Question number two. I said I love a great origin story. I love asking my audience about the beginnings of. As a creative, we all have that time we get that spark. Maybe you're making coffee, maybe you're in the car driving, maybe in a conversation. There's the initial flame that happens that spur you on to go and do this great thing, right? So the question is, tell us about the light bulb moment you had when you was like, you know what? I'm going to dedicate my time and effort to write this specifically. And also, did you have any other stories in mind at the time that could have been it? So she said, out of a team project, when I read an article about C.R. Patterson and his family, his business that later became the first and only African American owned automobile company. After learning he had daughters, Mary, uh, Dorothea, and Catherine, I wanted to know more about their lives, what their lives were like. What young black women who came from families with money and influence would have experienced. The Davenports is a mixture of my research and curiosity. Now, I'm always telling people, as adults, you gotta remain curious, man. Sometimes as we get older and we get our set routine and we're set in our ways, we lose the childlike curiosity. We gotta always stay in the presence of mind of if you're around a little small kid enough, they ask why, how, when, where all day. It's just unstopping, right? So as adults, we gotta go back and tapping into the curiosity. Curiosity sparks invention, creativity. Stay curious, right? So next, I say even though it's work is fiction, there are sort of things in here that are based on history. What was your research process like in writing this book? So another thing I love to ask my authors, kind of predominantly on the nonfiction side, but even on the fictional side, it's a level of research to be done to create these stories. Not many things are just pulled out of thin air. You just grab it stuff and just going. Most things have a base on something real. Right? That's my. She said, I love libraries, and I'm so grateful for my own at Chicago Public Library, where I was able to learn about influential Black Americans and the contributions they made to this country. Many served as inspiration for my characters. Through online archives, I was able to review city maps, restaurant menus, and newspaper articles. I also read The Wonder of the Sun, the epic story of America's Great Migration by Isabella Wilkerson, which was amazing. Now, side note caveat, right now I am currently in a buddy read group on Instagram. Shout out to Instagram and Bookstagram, right? Simply. Um, ran by the sister Celestially Yours, also my brother Dr. Raymond. I love Dr. Raymond. Uh, you got about 50 plus of us right now in the group, and we're reading Isabella Wilkerson's The Wonder of the Suns. For those that don't know, the movie out right now called Origin is based on her second book called Cash. So this book is a very, very amazing book about mass migration. In that Chicago area, once again, you had so many black people from the South moving to the Midwest, moving to the East Coast, moving to the West Coast, right? The big old West Coast push. So uh, her citing that very credible at this time. Follow-up question. I know that there are more movies, albums, and books. Everything can't be big. Everything can't go into the book. There's always a cutting room floor. I want. So you do all this research. You go into the archives. You have interviews. Stack of research. But the book only be but so big. Can't all make it. So I love asking my guests, like, what did not make it into the book? That's the question. She said, I can't say. That's the first. She can't tell what's not in the book, right? She said there is one scene I wish was there, but I was able to sneak it into the sequel, The Davenports, more than this, as a sequel. I am so excited for people to read it. So I'm gonna say it right now, Miss Crystal. I would love to be in your beta group to be able to get an art copy. I would love to read it. I would love to come back on the show and P experience and talk all about it, promote it, market it, advocate for it, whatever you want to call it. It is called the Davenports More Than This. That's the follow up I told you about earlier. There it is. She just said, right? Question number 5. This story takes place in Chicago. We know that there are popular black cities all over the U.S. during Reconstruction era. Why the focus on Chicago specifically? And did you actually spend time in Chicago to craft this story? She said Chicago became the focus setting because all the resources available online and because it's a popular black destination during the Great Migration and Reconstruction that preceded it. Due to the pandemic, I wasn't able to visit while writing the narrative. But I went this past summer and had a wonderful time exploring places the Davenports and their friends went to in the store. Let me see something right quick. So I'm just double checking the thought I just had. Okay, so I thought there might have been a map here, but there is no map in this book. Some books have maps and everything. Because she mentioned some of the places that the Davenports and their friends went to in the story. And I was curious if they had a map to see some of the things that's mentioned in the book, right? Question number 6. A large number of people, even black people, think that we didn't start getting real money until we became ballers and celebrities, like I said earlier. Tell us about the importance of stories like this showing black people thriving, having power and influence in this early time. She said, once I read it, she said, once I read, if a child don't see themselves in the story, professions, and history, it's hard for them to understand what's possible. The history I uncovered during the research was eye-opening, and I wish it was widely taught. Knowing what can be achieved can be the confidence for a person, and a student needs to succeed. Stories like this highlight the way Black Americans helped build this country. They are stories we should all be proud of, and I strongly believe that sharing them and discussing them, why they've been ignored, or help create more equitable society. And she's right. The more that we share these stories, the more we highlight, uplift these stories. We just had Black History Month a couple of days ago. Now we're in Women's History Month. Let's uplift these stories, tell these stories, put them out there, right? She mentioned, I'll go back. She mentioned her research on C.R. Patterson, his family. Before this book, I've never heard of C.R. Patterson, one of the first black-owned automobile companies. That should be mentioned more. That should be talked about more, highlighted more. We need these stories. My little cousins, for an example, are crazy about cars. Cars, trucks, motorcycles. If they want a motor on it, if there were wheels, they crazy about it. They need to know C.R. Patterson. They need to know a black man in that automotive world. How encouraging is that for them? So I'm gonna definitely tell them about the Davenports for an example, right? So she's right. These stories need to be told more to give our youth a boost of confidence, to give us a boost of confidence and self-worth. We always think that we're going by somebody else's judgment stick, somebody else's metrics. We have our own metrics. We have our own litmus test. We have our own standards, right? We got to uphold. This question, number 7. Let's talk more about the car industry. And right before it took off, how much of a gamble it was getting into that world. The whole country was so hooked on the horse and carriage idea, it ran with it. It thrived on horse and carriage, right? And then boom, the car came. She said, yeah, it wasn't like a no-brainer off the top of the head on the front side of it, and to be ahead of the curve. She said, gamble is the perfect word for it. The world was rapidly changing, and people moving all over the country to better opportunities. They became essential. but fun too. For John and Helen, characters in the book, automobiles are a symbol of possibility and future. I could imagine that. Recently, in the pandemic especially, it was a big cryptocurrency boom, right? Cryptocurrency, blockchain, NFTs, all this kind of conversation, right? People getting money. And I had a bunch of friends of mine that said, Sean, look, and coworkers, they said, Sean, look, I had cryptocurrency way back X amount of years ago. It was only a few little cents per crypto, right? And for a long time, it didn't do anything. So I cashed out. And a few of my friends said, Sean, don't you know if I would have held on to that cryptocurrency right now, I'd be a millionaire a few times over. That's the gamble part of it. If you are a part of the wave, or hopefully ahead of the wave, you got a chance to really, imagine when they first made the trains, right? And they first made the postal service, when they first made certain parts of life that's so common now, when they first made it, it was the great unknown. It's an investment. You can lose a lot of money. You can lose everything. But if you had that courage to be a part of that first part of that wave, when it finally takes off and the whole world needs trains, you good forever. Your family, once again, back to the family concept, your family is good forever. But if you jack it all up, your family will suffer. You lost it all, right? So it wasn't easy for the dad. That was on my screen. It wasn't easy for the dad to make a certain choice to get to this car game. But his son and his daughter, one of his daughters, they were heavy on the automobiles. They was heavy on trying to figure it out and break down the parts, break down the pieces, and get new parts and restoring parts. And they was all for it, man, because their daddy already had a thriving horse and carriage kind of business, and stable of animals and dealing with horses and whatnot. But they had a little small car garage, just kind of sort of dabbling into that world, man. So that's where the question came from. And like she said, it was a big gamble, man. It's a gamble. But it's possibility, it's futuristic, right? Number eight. Let's talk about the old battle between parents, I say it again, trying their very best to carve out a path so their children don't endure what they struggled with and went through. Trying to build something for generational wealth, a big thing that we all see these days. Versus the youth want to have free will and embrace their own dreams and visions that they see for themselves. Who best decides the right and wrong in this dichotomy? How in the world do you win? She said, well, I don't know if there's a winner, and what might be right for one could be wrong for somebody else. Each of the young women in this story, who narrate the story, are trying to find a balance between what they want and what their parents want, which in some cases bring a greater understanding to relationships. Some cases, it doesn't. I think the biggest takeaway is that there's a journey where they learn who they are and what they want. Then achieving that is up to them. And being a parent myself, that's the biggest part of being a parent. You're trying to set your kids up for success to avoid certain pitfalls and downfalls. But at the same exact time, at the end of the day, they gotta make their own choices. They gotta stumble and trip and fall down and hit your head and you get scraped a little bit. It takes all of that for this life experience, man. And all you can pray for is whatever mistake that they make is not like a life-changing mistake. It's not a drastic mistake, right? You can recover from it, hopefully. So that's the dichotomy going on in this book. For a lot of these characters in the story, they're young adults. about to go into adulthood, and they're trying to shake and move, not let your dad down, not let your mom down. The whole society, don't let them down. But more importantly, don't let yourself down. What do I want? My life. Whether it's good or bad, I'm going to deal with it more than anybody. So I need the reins in my hand much as I can, right? To dealing with that. Number 9, let's go into the character of Helen. Out this whole entire book, my favorite character is Helen. Being different from the latest stereotype of her day, moving to the beat of her own drum and wanting to chart a different path than her sister and other expectations. Tell us, what were you thinking about creating Helen's character? And also, what do you want the reader to get from her? She said, I love Helen. She is curious and determined and holds on to what makes her unique. She is the girl who grew up with a masculine interest, but also saw them as her interest. She wants to be valued for her skills and work ethic. And I think what I want readers to get from her most is not to be afraid to choose a different path. There is happiness in following your passion. And if you do, like minded people will find you. Yes, I agree with that. I'm big on finding your passion, your joy. It's cool to be weird. It's cool to be awkward. It's cool to be unique. And you will find your tribe. The more you're true to yourself, because so many people out there in this world are just followers. They're sheep. Whenever you're authentic and true to yourself, even when they rub somebody kind of the wrong way, they will respect you stand on your square. As the kids say these days, you're standing on business, right? You're standing on your square of who you are. You're not wavering to the crowd. So she's right about that. Number 10, the Davenport Part 2 is coming for sure. We know that. Are there any other work to look forward to seeing from you in the future, or any other projects even outside of writing? She said, I'm working on another project that I'm excited about, but it's too early to share. Stay tuned. So she could not give us any intel or whatever the secret mission is. I look forward to hearing. Number 11, I love the amount of books being turned into movies and series these days. If your book was turned into a series, who would you want to cast as your main character? So yes, I am loving it. Right now on Hulu, for example, you got the series The Black Cake. I love that series. You got The Black Girl. There are so many books being turned into movies, right? I mentioned earlier, Isabella Wilkerson cast is Origin, movie theater right now. American Fiction, movie theater right now. So all of these books being turned into film left and right. She said, that's a great question. I love that, by the way. When I was writing the Davenports, I didn't have anyone in mind. I was well into the editing when I discovered author aesthetic boards on Pinterest. So it's very difficult for me to cast. I do love seeing readers dream cast. They're always so fun. So yes, on Instagram and Bookstagram and Book Talk and BookTube, some people go on pictures and places like that, use AI technology or whatever, and they kind of make their own characters for these stories. I love seeing those. So the last question for the day is the fun fact. I say in your bio, you mentioned being a collector of shoes. So we know the Davenports are all about high fashion and flair. Out of all of your shoes, which one of your shoes is like your pride and joy? And tell us why. She said, this is such a tough question. Uh, I have shoes for every occasion and season, as most women do. She said, see the IG highlight. Also, I'm not tied to any one style. I'm not sure if they're my pride and joy. When I was in college, I got a pair of knee-high boots that I saved up for. It was super excited to go to Newberry Street in purchase. I did something similar last year for my birthday with a pair of heels. Shoes are one of my favorite forms of self-expression. Thank you very much, Ms. Krystal, for this. I want to thank her marketing team for the opportunity to be a part of their tour. the Davenport book tour. I appreciate it. This is my first time being on tour with a book. I've seen a bunch of them on the ground before. Never had a chance to be a part of one. Thanks for the opportunity. Thanks to your lovely staff. They've been great to work with. Great communication, back and forth, no confusion. Humble, kind, informative. I love it. Whenever book tour is coming, I'm serious. I love to be a part of it. Thank y'all very much for the experience. Go out there and get Davenport.